Hey everyone, welcome to my September 2020 pencil planning chat. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through my creative process that I went through when setting up the month of September in my bullet journal. I hope you enjoy it. So let's grab a notebook, grab a pencil, and an eraser, and let's get started. So the primary supplies you'll need to follow along with this video are going to be your journal, a pencil, and an eraser. It also wouldn't hurt to have a ruler, but obviously if you want to freehand everything and don't want to use a ruler, that's totally fine. It also wouldn't hurt to have a tool that can make circles. I'll be using the Picket Circle Master. However, you can also use a compass, or again, you can just freehand the circles if you want. It's entirely up to you and what you want your journal to be. It would also be a good idea to have some pens and markers and some washi tape, but again, you don't need to have any of them. So moving on from there, we're going to determine the color scheme. Because of the way I set up my journal for this year, I had decided all of the monthly themes for 2020 at the end of 2019. I did this just so I wouldn't have to think about it, and at the beginning of every month, I could just look back and reference my theme page and see what theme I would need to incorporate into the upcoming month. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I had already determined that this month's theme would be gray circles, and the main color being the light gray zebra mild liner. So now it's time to figure out what other markers I would want to use for this month's theme. The way I go about finding my monthly color scheme is by using a separate sheet of paper to test different markers. If you decide to do this with me, just keep in mind that the color of the sheet of paper may not match the color of the paper in your journal. So because I know the light gray mild liner will be the main color for this month, I decided that I was going to keep things mostly to different shades of gray. Knowing this, I pull out all of the different gray markers that I own for testing. Now that I have gathered all the different gray markers, it's time to compare them all against one another to the light gray mild liner and see what looks best. After swatching all of the gray markers next to one another, I can see the dark gray mild liner has a warmer tone to it than the other shades of gray. Because of this, I think I'm going to remove this gray and use the other markers that all have the cooler tone to their shade to make my color scheme. Now it's time to look at all of my washi tapes to see if I have any that fit the color scheme I've chosen. As you can see, I have a lot of bolder colors and patterns for washi tape, but two tapes stand out to me for this color scheme. There's this one, it's a little more on the blue side, but I think it will be nice for a subtle touch of color for this color palette. And I think this gray and white stripe one will go really well with these colors too. And again, it's important to do a swatch of the washi next to the marker swatches to compare and make sure none of the colors are clashing with one another. It's also important when creating your color scheme to consider if you will be using any stamps or stickers or watercolor, and you want to make sure those colors will be matching the ones you've already chosen, or if you'll need to be taking a different approach in order to incorporate those into your color scheme. Now it's time to figure out the layout for the month. This is especially crucial for me over the next few months as I only have 24 pages left in this journal, and I really want to try to wait until January to start a new one. Therefore, each month only gets 6 pages. Now it's not important that you wait until January to start a journal. You can start one whenever you want. It doesn't have to start in the new year. But since I'm so close and I feel I'm capable of reaching that goal, I'm gonna try and do so. Because I'm restricted to 6 pages in September, I want to make sure I'm using those pages wisely to optimize the flow of my monthly setup. In order to make sure there's room for everything, I'm going to work backwards through the month. Because I know there will be 5 weeks in September, I can rate out each week to make sure I leave enough room for those, and then determine where the remaining spreads go in the beginning. Doing this helps me visualize the flow of the month setup. Now that the weeks are filled in, I can fill in the rest, starting with the obvious ones like a cover page and a monthly spread, followed by my habit tracker, gratitude log, and brain dump. Because I've done my layout, I know exactly what I want to include and where it will fit into the setup. Now it's time to start my bullet journal. Let's start with the cover page. I start the cover by finding the center of the page. Once I've done that, I can place the header accordingly. This month I'm using a very simple font for my headers. It's all uppercase letters essentially. Each letter gets its own box and each letter is capitalized. I also want to make sure I include the position of the washi tape so I don't forget to include it in the setup. This washi tape is conveniently 15mm wide, which means it'll fit quite nicely into a 3-box height for my journal. So I'll just center it behind the header. Next, I add a variety of circles around the border. I'm trying my best to make it as random and asymmetrical as possible. Nothing too consistent as far as placement or size goes. And I don't want to add too much, so we're going to stop there. Now we're going to work on the monthly spread. Now there's tons of ways to do this. I usually rotate through 4 different designs. Vertical list, tall and thin on one page, small and thin on one page with events below it, and large and spread across 2 different pages. It really depends on the kind of month I'm expecting to have and what feels right. Let me know if you want me to go into more detail about the different types of monthlies you can have. This month I'm going to use a large 2-page setup because I think it's going to be a busier month for me. To set this up, I do the right page first because that's always what I do. I think it helps me visualize the month better. The right page will have the Wednesday through Saturday columns, and I know this month will have 5 weeks, so that means I'll need a 4x5 grid on the right page. I was hoping to have each day be marked as a circle instead of a traditional square or grid shape. In order to test this, first I'm going to divide the page up like I normally would when creating a monthly spread. It looks like I'm going to need a circle that fits in a 6 boxes by 6 boxes square, or 30mm by 30mm. My Circle Master has a circle template for a 31mm circle, which is a little larger than my squares for the days, but because I'm putting a buffer box between each day, it should work out. And maybe for more detail, I'll use a smaller circle in each individual day circle to write in the date for the day. Next, I outline the specific month using the circles to get an overview of what it'll look like. To save myself from having to erase things for 4 hours, I usually don't fill in every circle because that would take forever. For this layout, I think I'll include the day headers in smaller circles as well. And we finish this spread up with the header in the top left corner. I think if we try to add extra circles along the border for decoration that it would get too busy for my taste personally, but you are more than welcome to try it if you want to. But this is all I'm going to do for the rough sketch for this monthly spread. Up next is the habit tracker page. Like the monthly, there are many ways to make a habit tracker. Some of them are using a graph, having a vertical setup, using an array of small monthlies on one page, including small weekly trackers in each weekly spread, and all kinds of others. This month I'm going to try an array of small monthlies all on one page. I want it to be similar to the monthly in that each tracker is in its own circle. To see if I can make this work, I can place the Circle Master over the September month in my annual layout to see what size fits best. It looks like the 45mm circle would work. Because my journal has 5mm boxes, I know that this circle would take up a 9 box by 9 box space in my page. I can stack the circles and have them overlap a little in order to fit 3 on 1 page, side by side. This works great as I'm hoping to track 9 different habits this month. Let me know in the comments if you want an in-depth explanation of how I pick my habits every month, because for me it's a pretty detailed process. So now that we know what the trackers will look like, it's time to go in and add the header. Originally I was going to add circles along the border to tie in this month's theme, but I think having the trackers in circles is enough. But as always, don't forget that it's important to make this what you need it to be. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. But that's all I'm gonna do for this tracker, so it's time to move on. Now we'll work on the gratitude log. I've tried a gratitude log a few times in the past, but not often. I had one last month and I really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna try it for another month. There isn't much to set up for this log. All you need is a header, and a list of this month's dates on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to highlight every other line with the light gray mildliner, so it makes it easier to see which line I'm supposed to write on, but this is just my preference. And that's it for this spread. Next is the brain dump. I've actually never utilized this before, but now I think I could really benefit from having one for various lists and video ideas and so on. All you need for this spread is a header and maybe some flourishes along the sides, but nothing too eye-catching or can really take away from the creative space. And the sketch for the brain dump is complete. Now it's time to work on the weekly spread. So for the weekly setup, I use the Rolling Weekly, which I was introduced to by Plant-Based Bride, and I'll link her video on the Rolling Weekly in the description. Normally I would use 2 pages for the Rolling Weekly, but if you recall the layout stage, I said I'm only going to have room for 1 page per week. So I'm going to have to experiment with different setups that best fit my lifestyle for this month. Be sure to stay tuned for my next video to see the other ways of how I set up my weeklies. As you can see for the first week, I struggled for a little bit to find the layout that I liked best. I decided to have the 7 days on the left side and my tasks on the right. And that's all I'm gonna do for the rough sketch of the weekly. Now you're going to want to take good photos of your spreads before you do the next part. The last thing you want is to forget what you did and have to do it all over again. Now we're going to go back and erase everything from the rough sketches except for the parts we need as a guideline. This can be anything from light sketches of where I'll be putting washi tape, to the corners of where I'm going to be drawing circles, really anything. This will make it a lot easier when inking in the setup because you don't want to have to worry about pencil lines smudging under marker lines or smearing marker lines in an attempt to erase pencil markings, and just helps you avoid having to erase too much at once later. This is why it's so important to take good pictures of your spread so you don't forget certain ways you set things up in the rough sketch. Because of how much erasing I had to do for these rough sketches, I'm gonna skip bits so you don't get bored. Now it's time to put pen or marker to paper. If you want to see the final creation and you haven't already, don't forget to check out my September Plan With Me video where I complete this setup. I'll link it in the cards and in the description below. Thank you so much for going through my September 2020 pencil planning chat with me. I hope you got something out of it. If you do decide to recreate anything from this month's spread, I would love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram, Twitter, or Pinterest. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see more of the content that I'll be posting. Alright, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Happy doodling!